Okay, so today we're tackling the topic of a Resident Evil 6 remake, the one that is probably going to be the most difficult one to remake out of all of the games in the mainline franchise, if they even decide to do it, because I don't personally think it would be worth the effort. I think it would be cool to see, but I don't think it's worth the time, because holy shit, this game is big. So for a lot of people, and I think I am definitely one of those people, Resident Evil 6 was such a big turning point. It was just an action game for most of it. I think each campaign tried to do something a little bit different, and I think Leon's campaign was the best one, and the other two were kind of weird. I liked the story kind of beat in Jake's campaign. Chris's campaign was not good at all, but Leon's was fine. And then yeah, it just kind of, it was an ambitious game. It had a lot of mechanics in it. It was fun at times. There was a lot going on, but it was far from a Resident Evil game at that point. So I guess kind of the issue with remaking this game comes from how it plays and what happens in it. It's such a big movie set piece game, you know, it's action packed, there's stuff going on all the time, and where you can make Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 5 gritty and dark and tone down the combat in this game, I feel like that's such a hard thing to do. Nevertheless, we're going to talk about it today, kind of discuss some ideas, ping pong some thoughts back and forth, and yeah, let's get straight to it, because holy shit, this game is a lot. Okay, so let's talk about the big thing with Resident Evil 6, and it's the combat, the co-op, and the absolutely humongous amount of QTEs. So, the combat. I think it's very much a shooter game, and it kind of falls under the same umbrella, no pun intended, of Dead Space 3. You know, Dead Space 1, 2, great horror games, really well done, and they were more action-focused games as a whole, yes, but they were still good. Resident Evil 4, 5, good horror games, mainly action-focused, especially 5 compared to 4, and Resident Evil 6 and Dead Space 3 kind of took the Call of Duty route and made them like these super hyper combat games, and also made them co-op, which obviously Resident Evil was already doing, but Dead Space 3 did that as well, and both games kind of got universally panned for not being as good as the rest. On that note, I do want to say, if you actually like Resident Evil 6, which I have things I enjoy about it, so if you actually like Resident Evil 6, more power to you. I hope the game gets remade exactly how it is now, because if you like the game, then that's the main thing. But yeah, a lot of people don't, so I'm trying to kind of look at this from a middle of the line standpoint. So yeah, Leon's campaign, I think the very start of it, up until maybe when you get to China, is fine. I actually think that's a really solid game right there, until you get to China. I think the combat is paced quite well. I think there are moments where it goes a bit crazy, but for the most part it feels very RE. There's a lot of co-op requirements involved, and the combat feels nice. It feels very similar to RE5, and it's good at the start, but then it kind of declines about halfway through. Moving over to Chris's campaign, that's just a straight up combat fest from the get-go. Like, it's just straight up combat, there's nothing different about it, you are fighting everything full speed all the way through, and that's pretty much that. And then Jake's campaign, yeah, it's more of a hybrid campaign. From what I've kind of read online, people like it, but there's a lot of like set pieces in that campaign. There's a lot of running away, there's a lot of like quick time events, or like driving a vehicle or stuff like that. There's a lot of that going on in it, and looking back at it now, I kind of agree. But yeah, the story beat was there, and that was good, but gameplay standpoint, Jake's campaign, second best probably. And of course you had Ada's campaign as well. That was more built for a solo experience, but I don't think it worked that well. People don't really talk about Ada's campaign as much as others, and it's weird because it is obviously there. Maybe I'll do a big video on it one time just to kind of give it some limelight, but it's a bit shorter than the rest, and yeah, as a solo experience it doesn't really work because obviously the game is built around co-op, and it just feels weird. But yeah, there's a lot of things wrong with the game, but in terms of what happened, like things that happen in the game, there's some cool stuff, like Ada being in it again is good, and then her and Leon getting a little bit closer near the end, and then Chris and Leon meeting, and then Chris mentioning Claire to Sherry, who's grown up. There's a lot of cool stuff going on in the game, that is good, but it's mainly to do with like characters that have been in the game since the get-go. I think all the new stuff with all the new villains and stuff like that is just not as good. Obviously this is off the back of Wesker being killed, so new villain comes up and it's like, ugh, and the goal is kind of basic in terms of villains. And yeah, the plot of the game is just a bit off the rails, I would say. So, with all of that in mind, how could they, if they were going to make this game again, how could they improve it? And I think, quite simply, the best way to remake Resident Evil 6 is to remake the game from the ground up. It is not just a graphical overhaul, an engine overhaul with cut content and new content added in and whatever. It should just be redone. I don't know what they would do in terms of completely redoing it. I don't know if like characters would get scrapped or storylines would get scrapped, or they'd make it all one big campaign instead of having like 3 to 4 sprawling ones that do the same mission over and over again. Because yes, there are moments in each of the campaigns where you do the same boss fight again and there's no difference, so that's kind of annoying. But yeah, I feel like the best way to do this game is just to redo it completely. New story, new events, new things that kind of tie into the older games. And that's why I think this might not happen, because that's such an undertaking. The game already exists, so they want to remake it again. It would just be a huge time sink, and you'd be waiting for it for a while, because again, Resident Evil 6 is a big game, so they've really got to kind of look at it with a microscope and go, what are we going to do to make this game better than what it is, and to keep it relevant to the overarching storyline. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's a huge mess, and it's a shame, because if you actually play the game just to play it, and you kind of try and ignore the fact it's an RE game, and you kind of jump on with a friend and play it, it's a fun time. Like, the game is fun. I do not want to take that away from anybody. Like, I even think that the game itself to play and go through is fun, and there are moments that are just enjoyable to do. But it isn't a Resident Evil game anymore at that point. Like, it isn't one, and they do need to look at it with a bit more kind of focus if they're going to keep going with this mainline entry remake spree they're on, and just ask themselves, is this worth the trouble, or do we stop at 5? But yeah, that's pretty much going to do it. Again, anyone who does enjoy this game, please don't take this as me digging at the game completely, because I am not. I do, like I said, I enjoy playing it. There are things I like about it, but in a remake perspective, and them trying to bring this game back, I just don't see it happening, or don't see it being worth the time for them to do, which sucks to say out loud, because it is a shame. But this was the thing of its time. They were trying to compete with the big games. At the time of this game's release, COD was huge, and they were trying to kind of dig into that market, because that game was just exploding, and they made it a action game with just non-stop shooting, and it didn't work, and it pretty much killed the series until they came to their senses and did the absolute masterpiece of a game that is Resident Evil 7. So yeah, thank God for 6, because we wouldn't have got 7. But yeah, thank you for watching. Leave your thoughts on the whole situation down below. Do you think they'll actually do it, or do you think it'll be left where it is? And yeah, thank you for coming by, and I'll catch you in the next one.